Well, hello again. This is Hal,
And this is Melanie.
and we're continuing our discussion about the importance of relationship as the foundation of our parenting journey.
Relationship is important, as we mentioned earlier, because if when your children leave home, that's all you've got.
hmm
If you don't have a relationship with your kids by the time they leave home, they can walk away and never come back. It's
And,
relationship that draws them back, that brings them home for the holidays, that makes them pick up the phone to call you.
and that transition into their independent lives when they have that choice is something that comes into view when they reach the teenage years. When you
It
you,
is.
you look ahead, it's hard to say when they're 3 or 4 years old. It's hard to think about when they graduate from high school. But you know what? When they're 12, 13, you better start thinking about what happens when they
Yeah.
graduate.
Well, you've got to. And the other reason that relationship is so important is that research has shown us that the biggest predictor for whether a child raised in a Christian home
Mhm.
will stay in the faith when they're adults is, do they have a good relationship with their Christian mom or their Christian dad? One or the other. It doesn't have to be one, but either one is enough to draw them to the faith, because God is so often pleased to use relationship to bring us to himself. So let's talk about relation. Or in the earliest part, we talked about relationships with babies, infant, preschoolers, early elementary. Now let's
Mhm.
talk about the middle school and high school years.
And I tell you what, this is so critical because over and over again, studies have found, surveys have found that people who walk away from the faith, people who have broken relationships in their family, so often it happened in the preteen years, in the middle school ages,
Yes.
not necessarily when they were rebellious 17-year-olds, but they're over and over, you hear stories of people that say, well, this is where things went astray for us when I was in middle school. Because there are major changes going on in your child's emotional stability,
And their intellectual ability.
and there's a lot of things that are in transition here that if we don't handle that relationship carefully through those transitional times, then what comes out at the other end, and I'm talking about when they are teenagers and
Yeah.
out of this transition, that may be a flimsy relationship, one that's not on firm footing. And so we need to take that into account, that when your child hits the earliest stages of adolescence, long before you see all those physical external things, when the emotions go crazy, you've got to be stable. You have to be
Yes.
full of patience and full of grace and understanding.
Because if you're out there being bounced about by the storm like they are,
Mhm.
I don't know if you know anything about ships, but if you're in a ship in a storm, your goal is to get away from other ships. Because if you're too close to another ship, that they bang against each other,
Right.
okay, and they tear each other to pieces. And so when your child's in the middle of a hormonal storm, then you need to be the lighthouse. You don't need to be out there bouncing around in the storm with them, as
Mhm.
tempting as it is, because they can be really annoying during that stage. As tempting as it is to climb on that emotional roller coaster with them, to get out in the stormy sea with them, you can't do it. Okay.
My experience, our experience with our kids, that we've had 7 now that have gone through this, and with the 8th is just embarking. Our experience has been that during those years of transition from childhood into the teenage frame, they really need us to be stable, to be calm,
Yes.
and to, frankly, to take their outbursts with a certain resilience. Not
Yeah.
to allow them to sin,
No,
not to allow them to be
you're
disrespectful.
not going to let them get away with disrespect.
No,
But
but
if you freak out as soon as they start freaking out, if it's like, I'll say, hey, son, you forgot to take
Ma'am?
out the trash. Why didn't you take out the trash? You need to take out the trash.
Oh, I'll get around to it. It's not really full anyway.
No,
Well, if I
no,
can press it down.
no. I need
That's
you to
okay.
take it out right now, son.
Well, I don't know why right now. I mean, the trash truck's not going to be here tomorrow anyway.
I said to do it right now.
I've got, well, there's something else that I was trying to get finished here before I do this, I'm it's not really it's not my trash. Shouldn't have to take out this. I mean, why do you always ask me to take out the trash? I don't think that's fair at all. Why did my sister take out the trash? Why don't you take out the trash? I don't think I always have to do it all the time. It's not fair.
Okay, look, you're not going to talk to me that way. You're grounded.
I don't care. I don't
Well,
care if I'm
well,
grounded.
if you're grounded, you're not going to be able to go to the youth event this weekend.
I didn't want to go there. I don't have any friends. I don't like that. I don't like that stuff anyway. It's dumb.
Well, then you're not okay. Well, you're not going to be able to go to your friend's house next week.
What friends? I don't have any friends.
Well,
I don't
then
care.
you're grounded for 2 weeks.
I don't care. You might as well make it a month. Make it the rest of my life. My life's terrible.
You're grounded for 3 months.
That's fine. That's fine. Just make it forever. I can't stand it
And
anymore.
pretty soon you've grounded them for 10 years, and that doesn't work.
It's unproductive.
Okay?
Yeah, it's
But
ineffective. But honest to goodness,
if
they are like that.
they are irrational, and if you get irrational back, it's not going to help. Okay.
Well, a critical thing, we try to bring this out in a lot of our workshops that we do at conventions, is that the word disciple and discipleship comes from the same root word that means to teach and to discipline. And you know what? If they're not teachable, your discipline is going to be ineffective. And when they're in an emotional storm, they have these bursts. When they're in one of these little turmoils, they're not really hearing you. They're not teachable. They're not going to receive instruction or correction. And you almost have to let the storm blow past in order to get some sentience back into that little head.
Well, one way to think about it is, the enemy's attacking him. The enemy's saying nobody loves you, nobody understands. If you immediately go to discipline when they start melting down,
as if they were 6 years old or something.
Yeah, they're going to be convinced of it. Okay.
Right.
But instead, if you invest in the relationship first before you discipline, say, hey, son, come here. Sit down. Let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here? You seem really angry about this trash can thing. And you talk and you encourage them to talk to you. What you're saying is the opposite of what the enemy's saying. You're saying, I love you and I want to understand.
Yeah.
And when you do that, then, you listen to them, and sometimes they're crazy. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense.
No, but when you listen, what you're telling them is, I care.
Yes.
I care about you as a person. And,
yes.
And this is a radical thought. I thought about this. One of our sons is studying animal science, and he was talking with the farm manager, and the farm manager said, I let the students name the cattle. They can give names to all the cows if they want. But the chickens, I tell them, they're just the flock. Don't name the chickens. Don't even think of them as individuals. We parents sometimes do that with our children.
Uh-oh.
We tend to think of our children as the herd, the flock, the kids, and we don't really appreciate every single one of them is an individual,
yes.
uniquely fashioned by God, and they're just as much a person as mom is a person and dad is a person, and your coworkers are people.
And we believe that, but sometimes our actions don't show it.
Well, we believe it, but what does that mean to us?
So listen, now don't be afraid. If you discipline this way, you're not going to let them get away with it.
No.
But you're going to let them talk, and then as they come down off the cliff, as you talk them down out of the tree, then you're going to be able to. Then you take them the Word of God. Then you rebuke them. Then you issue discipline. And so discipline's got to change, but there's other things that have to change during the tween and the preteen years too, to maintain relationship. You need to do a whole lot more listening, not just in discipline, but just in general.
Well, the big relationship change that comes through those years, I think, is that when your child is an elementary schooler, when they are up to say 8 or 10 years old or so, they need direction. That's what they need. They need a commander, a director. They need a dictator who's going to rule over them and take care of them, but make sure that they toe the line. But when they leave our homes at 18 or whenever, we expect them to be independent adults, able to discern, to make good choices, to know when to ask for advice and whose advice to seek out. And that doesn't happen on their 18th birthday.
No.
To get to the point where they see us as their advisors and not as their directors, we've got to start making a transition, and it's all through those teenage years.
Yes.
And that is a relationship shift when we start to say, you know what, I'm going to start to give you more responsibility and more freedom and more opportunity to make decisions and to live with the consequences of your decisions. And I'm here to give you all the advice.
a lot of people, I think that's super important that that we're recognizing their growing adulthood, that we're
Mhm.
respecting it, that we're preparing them for it,
Yeah.
because I think that causes some kids to pull away. I think also, though, we need to be careful to, people say all the time, oh, my 17-year-old son doesn't talk to me at all.
We hear that, and you know,
But,
say I ask him a question, he just grunts.
but
You know.
then I ask him, well, what does he talk about? What's he interested in? And lots of times it's like, all he wants to talk about is whatever, the latest video game or what his
Yeah.
hobby.
Yeah.
And I'll say, it's not that your son won't talk, that he doesn't want to talk about what you want to talk about.
Okay.
And
Well, you ought to let that sink in just a minute,
okay,
because that's serious. Because we want to talk to our kids about particular things that we know are important. And
but this is the next part of that. If you want your children to listen to you, you have to listen to them. For teens and tweens,
Mhm.
listen, if you want your child to listen to you, you've got to listen to them, because when you are tuning out everything they say, oh, he's just going on about Minecraft again, roll your eyes. When you're tuning out everything they're saying, why are we surprised when they're tuning out what we're saying?
And a lot of times I think we don't even realize we're doing it. It's habitual.
No, we're busy.
But
Well,
you know what?
I noticed this with myself.
Mhm.
I realized that my children would go by and they would throw out conversation starters.
Uh-huh.
Now, based on what they were interested in.
Yeah.
And I go, because I was busy, and they keep walking.
And guess what? What that reinforces to them is mom and dad are too busy or too distracted or too uninterested to even talk to me when I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
You know what?
Oh.
Guess what? They could be saying the same things to their friends that we say to ours. We say, I don't get it. My teenager just won't talk to me. Our teenagers may be telling each other, I don't get it. Mom and dad don't talk. They talk at me, but they don't talk to me.
And so as our kids, they're moving into the tweens, preteens, and then the teens, they are developing a sense of self that realizing that they're independent people, they have their own opinions, their own ideas, their own interests. And we would do well to recognize that, because when we do, this is the cool part, because we've tried it with our kids and it works. When we show interest in them, when we take those conversation starters they fling out and say, hey, tell me more, or what are you talking about? They begin to realize that we really love them as people, as individuals, not just as one of our projects
or a member of the flock.
Yeah, but they realize that we're interested in what they're interested in. I remember years ago, one of my sons had a passion for something I have zero interest and less talent in. And so we were riding somewhere together, and he talked about it for 5 hours. And I thought I would lose my mind. I was trying to stay awake. We were driving, and it was really hard. But years later, he said, hey, Mom, you remember that time we were driving and I was talking about, and I said, yeah, I do remember that. I remember it's painful. He said, I felt so loved that night because you were interested in what I was interested in because you love me.
That's important. That's really it. And that is a critical part of the relationship that they leave home with.
Yeah.
That we need to be there to say, hey, I care enough about you to take my eyes off my phone, to look up from my laptop, to put a finger in the place in my book and make eye contact with my child and say, really, tell me about it.
And when we've done that, we found that pretty soon they were listening to us. So if you're trying to build a relationship with your tweens and teens, you got to change the way you discipline. You can't discipline a 14-year-old like you do a 6-year-old.
Right.
You've got to recognize their growing adulthood and start moving them toward adulthood and independence.
Giving them more chances to make decisions and to live with consequences.
And if you want your kids to listen to you, listen to them. And we have found that those that those ways of building relationships with teens and tweens, that they have huge blessings. Our adult kids are our best friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are the biggest peer supporters of this ministry. They are the ones we go to when we have needs or help or need help or advice. They come to us for advice. In fact, we're late producing this podcast today because we just spent an hour on the phone with 2 different adult kids who needed somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And folks, that's what you want. That is what you want when
Right.
your kids leave home. So work on relationship because it's important. Relationship and discipleship, the big jobs of parents.
Okay. Well, look, we appreciate you joining us here and hope that this is useful and encouraging, maybe challenging to you. But you know what? That's not the only relationship that we got to be concerned about. The relationship between the husband and wife predates that one of the parent and child.
And a strong marriage relationship gives your kids security,
mm-hmm.
and it blesses them, and it's an example of them.
So we want to invite you to join us for a marriage retreat. It's not your average marriage retreat, which is like a death march of workshop after workshop.
But we give you lots of free time to talk about the things we're teaching you.
This is both a teaching retreat and a couples getaway. We're going to be in the mountains of Western North Carolina in November 8th through 10th. This is 2019 if you're listening to the recording sometime
But
later.
if you're listening to it later, then go to our website,
mm-hmm.
hit the shop, scroll down to live events, look for Come Away Weekend.
And that website is
raisingrealmen.com.
Right. We hope you'll join us there, okay? And we hope you'll join us again for every episode as we look again at biblical principles to make the biblical family life a practical reality, okay? We thank you. And until next time, I'm Hal.
And I'm Melanie.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye, y'all.